All right, the next part we're going to do now that we've kind of gone through all of our different factoring parts, if you're on page 17 in your notes, first, before it gets into solving equations by factoring, it goes through all of the different, the checklist that you should be following for factoring any type of polynomials. Okay, so that little box it has in the middle of the page says first you always have to look for a common factor. So don't forget, that's your first step. Don't just like automatically see something and go for something different. You always have to look for a common factor first. Then you look at the number of terms, okay? And if there's two terms, then you should be looking for a difference of two squares, okay? Not always going to happen, but if you see a perfect square minus a perfect square, that's what you're going to do, right? Then you look for, if it's got three terms, is it a trinomial square? And if it's a trinomial square, then you know the shortcut for that. And if not, then you just see if you can test out the factors and see if you can just factor it like normal, okay? And if it's four terms, then you're going to look for if you can do factor by grouping, okay? And then don't forget that you're not done factoring a lot of times after just one time. So you got to make sure you keep checking your answers and any binomials you end up with or any trinomials that you end up with that you don't have to keep going, okay? So don't just do those first couple things and then stop, okay? Keep looking to make sure you're done. All right, so the next section that we're going to get into is called solving equations by factoring, okay? And you should already be thinking, right, just in the title alone, solving equations, well, that means that we're going from just the regular polynomials to now we have an equals sign in here, right, because it says equations, so equations means equals. All right, and so we're going to start this unit off, this little section off, by talking about, it's called the principle of zero products. Okay, now it sounds real big and fancy, but if you kind of break that down, zero products, right, means multiplying by zero. Product means multiply, and zero is zero. So basically, how do you get zero if you're multiplying? That's the question, or that's the statement there. Well, if you think about it, when you're multiplying, the only way you can get zero is if one of the things you're multiplying together is zero, right? So if I multiplied like 7 times 0, I'm going to get 0, right? Or what if I did 0 times 2x? That turns out to be 0, right? What if I did 0 times 2x minus 5? That's a bad 5, but you get the idea. So 0 times 2x minus 5 is still 0, right? So part of helping us figure out what an answer is to a solution, okay, or to a polynomial or to an equation, is by setting the equation equal to 0, and then all you have to do is find out if you make one of the terms equal to 0, then that'll be the answer, okay? So let's take a look at this really quick. I'm going to flip over now to page 18. Okay, and right at the top of page 18, I'm going to switch slides here. Okay, right at the top of page 18, they give you a problem. And they say 5x plus 1 times x minus 7 is equal to 0. Okay, so if you start to think about this, if I was to take this problem, and if I just made this whole parenthesis right here, okay, this whole first one, equal to 0, okay, so if I said, instead of 5x plus 1, I replaced the whole thing with just 0, that would make this equation be true, right? So if I did 0 times x minus 7, that would give us 0, right? Or if I did 5x plus 1 times 0, that would also give us 0, right? And so that would make it true. So that's what you're going to do to actually help solve these problems. What you're going to do is you're going to take each one of these parentheses and set it equal to 0. Because if I can make this first part, 5x plus 1, 0, if I do this and say, hey, 5x plus 1 is equal to 0, then I just need to figure out, well, what do I put in for x to make this equal to 0, and that would give me a solution. Okay, so we already know how to solve these, right? We did this a couple units back. So I'm just going to solve for x here. I'm going to subtract my 1 from both sides, and I'm left with 5x equals negative 1. and then divide by 5, okay, and I'm left with x equals negative 1 over 5. So if I was to take this negative 1 over 5 and plug it back in for x up here, okay, that would make this turn out to be 5 times negative 1 over 5 would give you negative 1, right, because 5 times negative 1 over 5, right, you put that over 1, those cancel, and you're left with negative 1. And then you have negative 1 plus 1 becomes 0, right? That equals 0. And then if that's 0 times x minus 7 gives me 0. So that is one of my solutions. So x could equal negative 1 over 5, and that would make this equation 0, and that is one of our solutions to it, okay? Now the other thing you got to do was, well, since I figured out what this one is, okay, the first term could be, well, I got to figure out the other one too. So if I do x minus 7 equals 0, I add 7 to both sides, then I get x is equal to 7. So if I put 7 in for x, okay, then you're going to get 7 minus 7, and then this second parenthesis becomes 0. Okay, and so that makes the whole thing go away, and that is another solution to this. Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's the basics to this. What you're going to have to do is you're going to get equations, and you're going to go ahead and factor them down. First of all, you're going to have some type of polynomial. You're going to factor it down, and then find out what the factors could be to make this equal to 0 and be solutions to the problem. All right. So as you go down, you can see where in the top of page 18 in the box, okay, they solved for x equals negative 1/5 and x equals 7, just like we did, but then they plugged it back in to show you what actually happens, right? If you plug those back into the problem, and you end up with the right answers. Okay, let's keep going on. All right, so midway down it says factoring and solving. Okay, so the following steps, we're going to use these following steps to solve equations using the principle of 0. Okay, now, so here's the deal. First thing you're going to do is you want to get 0 on one side of the equal sign. Okay, so you want to get something equal to 0. And then, from there, you're going to factor it down. Okay, and then you're going to take each of the two factors, okay, and you will set them equal to 0 and solve. And then check out if you got it right or wrong. Okay, so the example they give you x squared minus 6x is equal to 16. Okay, so right now what you'd have to do is you'd have to kind of guess and check as to what x could equal, right? So if they wanted to say, well, let's put a number in and find out what'll give us 16 for x. Okay, well, that's not very easy. You'd just be guessing. So I might do 4. Okay, that'd be 16 minus 24. No, that doesn't work. 5, well, let's try that. No, 25 minus 30. No, that doesn't work either. Okay, so that's not going to work for us. So what you're going to do here is instead, let's set this equal to 0. So what I want to do is I want to take this 16 over here, okay, the 16 on this side, and I want to move it over to that side. Okay, so I'm just going to subtract 16 from both sides of the equation. Okay, well, on the right side now, 16 minus 16, we now have it equal to 0. So we're good over there. But now the 16 doesn't go with anything, right? So it just has to be another term. So it's x squared minus 6x minus 16 is equal to 0. Okay? And now, so we've now got our problem equal to 0. So now our next step is to think about factoring it and trying to get down to its factors. Okay? And so you look first, there's no common factor. It's not two terms, so we can't do a difference 2 squares. Is it a trinomial squared? Well, it is a square and a square, but remember, in a trinomial squared, it has to be plus at the end, so that doesn't work. Okay, so we're just going to have to factor it like normal. So I know it goes like this. Okay, we know we have binomials. So we have x in the beginning, and we also know that we're going to have a plus and a minus because they have to multiply to be that negative there, right? And then how could I put this together that the factors will be opposite, so they're going to subtract to be 6. Okay, and if you think about the factors of 16, you have 1 and 16, 2 and 8. Oh, well, look at 8 and 2, if you subtract those you get 6. And I want the 8 to be the negative one because I want it to be a negative 6. Okay, so there we go. So our two factors are x plus 2 and x minus 8 is equal to 0. Okay, now that you've factored it down, all you do is take each part and you set it equal to 0. Okay. Alright, now we solve. Okay, we know how to do this part. So x can equal negative 2 and x can equal positive 8. Okay, and if you plug this in back into the equation, so if you did, let me shrink this down a little bit. There we go. So if we put negative 2 in there, you'd have negative 2 squared minus 6 times negative 2 is equal to 16. So we have negative 2 squared is 4. Okay, negative 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. Oh, sorry, positive 12. And that equals 16. 4 plus 12, 16. 16 equals 16, so we're right there. And then let's plug in 8. So x equals 8, right? So we get 8 squared minus 6 times 8 equals 16. So you get 64 minus 48 equals 16. And then there you go, 16 equals 16. So we did it right. Both of our answers turned out correct. Okay? So there's how you do this. You just basically, you set the equation equal to 0. You factor, so you break it down into its common factors, or you do common factors and so forth. And then once you have your factors broken down, you set each one equal to 0, and then that'll tell you what the root of the problem is, okay, what the answer to the problem is. Okay. All right, we have a couple more. Try these over here. We have a couple more problems to give a shot. Okay, we got example 2 here. We got x squared plus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, well, it's already equal to 0, so we don't have to get it equal to 0, which is nice. Okay, but we don't have a difference of two squares. We don't have trinomial squares, so we're just going to factor our trinomial like normal. I know we have x's in the beginning, and I'm either going to do two positives or two negatives, and it's going to be two positives because we're adding to be a positive number. And the factors of 6, we got 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Well, when you add those together, 2 and 3 equal 5. So now we set them equal to 0. X plus 2 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. And then you solve. So minus 2. X equals negative 2. And you do, minus 3. And x equals negative 3. So those are my two solutions. Okay, you plug them back in. You got negative 2 squared plus 5 times negative 2 plus 6 equals 0. So 4 plus negative 10, or we could just do minus 10, right? Let's erase that. 4 minus 10 plus 6 equals 0. 4 minus 10 is negative 6 plus 6 is 0. 0 equals 0. And then we got negative 3. So negative 3 squared plus 5 times negative 3 plus 6 equals 0. So you got 9 minus 15 plus 6 equals 0. And you put all those together, you get 0 equals 0. So there you go. We got it right again. So negative 2 and negative 3 are your solutions. Okay, so this isn't a super difficult process. It's all stuff you already know how to do. We're just kind of putting it in action now, okay, and helping us solve for roots of problems. All right, so you have a couple. Try these. Start at the top of page 19, and you have a total of 3, A, B, and C. Okay, and at the top you got bottom of 19 and top of 20. So give those a shot really quick. Okay, first try this that you have. X squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. So we're already equal to 0. We don't have to do anything there. So let's just go straight into our factors. Okay, and we have x in the first spot. And then we have, we're going to multiply to be negative, so we want to give it a positive and a negative. And we want them to subtract to be 1, so I know that that has to be 3 and 2, and no, it's going to be negative 1, so we want the 3 to be biggest, right? Okay, and that equals 0, so x plus 2 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0. Subtract 2 from both sides, x equals negative 2. Add 3 to both sides, x equals 3. Okay, plug those back in. Negative 2 squared is 4 minus negative 2, so 4 plus 4. 4 plus 2 is 6, minus 6 is 0. And then plug in 3, you get 3 squared is 9, minus 3 is 6, and minus 6 is 0. So that works out. There's our solutions. Okay, next problem we have x squared minus x equals 56. I'm going to change colors just for fun. So we're not equal to 0, so we have to subtract 56 from both sides. So we get x squared minus x minus 56 equals 0. Hopefully you're kind of like seeing this already and you're going, hey, I think I already know what numbers can go into these, right? Because as you're looking at the number as it gets there on the end, you should start thinking right away, well, I know the factors of 56 are, and then you can like start to realize what's happening here. So hopefully that's kind of clicking in your brain now, by now. Okay, so I know we have x in the beginning, and I know I'm going to have a plus and a minus because it has to multiply be a negative. And the factors of 56, that would be negative 1 would be 8 and 7, right? So 8 is going to be negative, 7 is going to be positive. Okay, and then we're going to shrink that down a little bit. Let's move that up. There we go. And then x plus 7 equals 0. X minus 8 equals 0. So minus 7 from both sides. X is equal to negative 7. Plus 8 to both sides. X equals 8. And if you want to plug those in, so negative 7 squared is 49 minus negative 7, so that's plus. So you get 56 minus 56 is equal to 0. There you go. And then 8 squared is 64. Minus 8 is 56. 56 minus 56 is 0. So that worked out also. Alright. We are moving right along. Let me slide this up a little bit. Oh, that didn't work. Let me I'll move this whole thing, shrink it down, and then we'll move it on up. How about that? Alright, and then the last one, x squared minus 3x equals 28. And we're not equal to 0, so I'm going to switch to blue and move it on over. There we go. So x squared minus 3x minus 28 equals 0. Okay, so factors of 28 that if you subtract them, right, because it's negative, you end up with negative 3. Well, hopefully you already have it in your head. So x is in the beginning, plus and minus, and I know the factors of 28 are 7 and 4 that subtract to be 3, and I want to get negative, so it has to be the 7 is the negative number. Okay, so x plus 4 equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0. Okay, subtract 4, x equals negative 4, plus 7, x equals 7. Alright, so that's the try these on that page. Kind of feels like the next part is actually the same idea. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep on moving along with this rather than stopping the video. So I know this is going to get a little long, but I think you guys can deal with it. Okay, so middle of page 20 talks about the root of the polynomial. Okay, and so they might give you something like it has here, right? It says 4x squared minus 25, and it'll ask you what are the roots of this. And basically what that's saying is what is x going to be? They want to know what will x be to make this work out, okay? And so what you do to do that is you just set it equal to 0. Okay, turn it into an equation and you set it equal to 0. So if it ever asks you like what is the root of this polynomial, That's what you're going to do. You're just going to make it equal to 0 and then solve for x and do what we just did. Okay? Well, hopefully you realize just by looking at this one, it's a difference of two squares, right? So you should right away be able to know you got to do x plus, x minus, that's bad, x. Okay, and then square roots, right? So 2 and 2 and 5 and 5. Okay, so now you just plug each one, make each one equal to 0. So 2x plus 5 equals 0, 2x minus 5 equals 0, and then solve. So minus 5, 2x equals negative 5, divide by 2, x equals negative 5 over 2, and then we'll do plus 5 on this one. You get 2x equals 5, divide by 2, and x equals positive 5 over 2. Okay, which that makes sense, right? Because it's a perfect square. They're both perfect squares, so your answer should be positive and negative the same thing, because perfect squares, right? You want something that's multiplies by its self to get that number, right? So it just makes sense that the root of a perfect square, a difference of two squares, would be the same number, positive and negative, because you square them and it becomes the number. Alright, and the last part is just some try these. So give those try these a shot. It's the same thing we've been doing, right? Just make sure you put them equal to 0 first and then solve them. So give those a shot and then come on back. Okay, so let's take a look here. X squared plus 6x plus 9, it says find the root. So that should tell you right away. Let's put it equal to 0. Okay, I'm going to switch colors. Alright, well, I noticed we have a perfect square in the beginning, perfect square in the end. And if you took the square root and multiplied it times 2, that would be 6. So we're good. So your answer here would be x plus 3 squared, right, equals 0, because that's a perfect square trinomial. Now, I'm hoping you realize that we don't have to do this twice because it's the same thing, right? So all you have to do here is do x plus 3 equals 0. You don't have to do it 2 times because you're going to get the same answer. If you didn't realize that, then bang your head on the wall really quick. Alright, not too hard though, because you don't want any blood. Alright, so subtract 3 from both sides. You get x equals negative 3. Alright, those trinomial squares, those are some cool ones, right? Because they have a whole lot less work. Okay, and if you plug in that negative 3 back into the equation, okay, that would work out pretty well. Negative 3 squared is 9. Okay, and then 6 times negative 3 will be negative 18, so 9 plus negative 18 will give you negative 9, plus 9 will give you 0. So we are good with that one. Alright, and then finally, let's move this guy up. I knew it was going to do that. Let's move the whole thing. There we go. Get that out the way. Alright, and then we have 25x squared minus 16. And it says find the roots again, so we're going to set that equal to 0. And if you look at that right now, you should be telling me already what that is. It's only got 2 terms, so you should automatically be thinking difference of 2 squares, right? And they are perfect squares, and there is a minus. So here we go. So we have 5x plus 4, 5x minus 4 equals 0. And then we just solve. 5x plus 4 equals 0. 5x minus 4 equals 0. Okay, subtract 4 from both sides. 5x equals negative 4. Divide by 5. X equals negative 4 over 5. Add 4 to both sides. 5x equals 4. Divide by 5. X equals 4 over 5. There you go. Okay, again, it's perfect squares, so your answer should be, right, the positive and the negative, because when you square the positive, you square the negative, they both turn out to be positives. Alright, well that's it for this section. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure, if you need to, go back over, look over this again. Hopefully you have memorized all of your factoring steps. The next part coming up is word problems with them, so make sure you know what you're doing, because this is always the hard part for people. I don't know why. I think you guys just get freaked out by them more than anything, because when you sit and read them, it's really not that hard. But let's get it done, and feel free to ask if you have questions.